Hey everyone, Mrs. Horror yet again, and I'm back for more talk about horror romance. If you want to find out a little bit more about horror romance and how to write it, this video covers more of those aspects. Before we get started, how about you press that subscribe button, give this video a like, and ring that bell so you know when I'm uploading new Mrs. Horror videos. So, after part one of this horror romance series, that one is actually called what was the name of that video? It was only a week ago. Um, what is romance, horror romance, and how to write it? And I gave you one tip to get you started off on how to write horror romance, and that's just a little touch of how you could begin, especially if you've never written it before. Obviously, you wouldn't be looking at the video if you already know how to write it. And so, yeah, that tip was just to make sure you know what you're writing. If you have never written horror romance separately, then you probably maybe should research just a little bit before you write them together. Understand how horror is structured, also how romance is structured, just meaning the aspects of those things. The fear that's in horror, the build up, the tension, things like that. And those tension is also in romance. And it depends on what kind of romance you're writing, obviously. But again, understanding those things. So you can always check out that video. I will put the link below for that one if you want to check it out. So I have 5 points that I want to cover in this video. It's not a long video, but just to give you a general idea of how you can write horror romance. And I'm not giving you general like how to write because writing anyway is just deciding that you're going to write a story and then write it down. Of course, there is many ways you can structure a story, many ways you can get yourself started, whether you're a pantser, a plantser, or a planner, those type of things. We're not talking about that stuff. So we're going to talk a little about how you can write horror romance and not the whole behind how to write. Okay. So number one, get your ideas down. Just like anytime you write anything, you want to get your ideas down. What's the whole idea, concept of this story that you're thinking of writing for this horror romance? So you want to, whatever the idea was that sparked your interest, you do it to begin with. You want to write all that stuff down. Doesn't matter how jumbled it may seem. Those notes will definitely help you with the next things you need to do. All right. Number two, what are the planned horror aspects in this book? What kind of horror is it? Because there are a lot of horror genres out there. Again, if you're not too sure about the horror genres that exist, I have a category video about horror genres, especially some of them in my opinion, but they all exist. It's just more like I named some of them differently than some may, But you're welcome to look at that video. I'll also link that below. But it gives you an idea of horror genres. Like I have zombie as one. And then thrillers are under horror, but those are more, whatever. They're not very scary to me, but that's just my opinion. So yeah, check that video out if you need to get a refresher on some horror categories. I mean, is this going to be a psychological horror, or psychological horror romance? Is this going to be a zombie horror romance, something like Warm Bodies that I mentioned in another video? So those kind of things. So you want to write down what kind of horror aspects is going to be in this book. What kind of horror is it to go along with this romance? So make sure you know that going in, so you know what you're going to be giving out. You're going to go gore. Are we going gore? We're going monster-based horror, or are we going to go, supernatural horror? Like, what are we going for? Like beings from supernatural horror, I mean, like demons and things like that. Are we going that way? So you want to try and figure that out before you start. You got your idea, but you also want to see where that idea falls as far as the horror aspects of the story. If that makes sense to you. Number three, how does a romance between the characters develop? So you kind of want to have an idea that'll help you too. Get ahead about, mixing the horror and the romance together. If you already know possibly how the romance would possibly develop, maybe how they meet, or what kind of romance this will be as well. That's also a thing, similar to what I said about the horror aspects. So there's lots of different types of romance out there. Is this going to be a fiery, passionate romance? Is this going to be a little simmery type of romance? Is this going to be a wholesome type of romance? Like, what is it going to be? I mean, you can come up with plenty of ideas. But just knowing this going in, again, will help you develop the story better, especially when you're trying to balance two genres together. All right. Point number 4, making sure that the horror stays relevant. Now, you can get quite immersed in your story and go off on a tangent of writing, meaning you get really into the romance aspect and the horror aspects gets kind of buried. You don't want that to happen because you want it to be a balance, because it is called horror romance. And you want it to be a good balance. And of course, you can do whatever you want. You can have a little teeny itty bitty tiny bit of horror and a whole lot of romance. Up to you, obviously. But I'm just saying, in a good balancing of the two, so that way people can know what they're getting and not be like completely and utterly shocked that this is turned out to be horror, because it had a whole lot of romance and very little bit of horror. And then, oh, I remembered that I supposed to be having horror in this, and then magically the horror reappears. All right, so unless that's your intent. I mean, it could be your intent to be like, oh, surprise, Zor didn't know, did you? It was a romance. Too bad, so sad. So, I mean, if you're planning to do that, then that's fine, as long as it's on purpose. Okay, so number 5, combining those two aspects together and making sure they mesh well. So anyone can mess that up. This is true. But knowing it while you're writing it and remembering that I need to keep a balance of these two is a good thing to do. Besides my 5 points there, I also wanted to say that if you want to keep the creepiness, again, it still depends on what kind of horror you're writing, being that half the genre. So not all horror is going to go for creepy, mind you. You can go for outright, attacking, like gore, bloody type of thing. It really depends on what you're writing. That's a lot, in my opinion, easier to write that type than the kind where you're trying to just keep it creepy atmosphere, is you have to try to figure out, how to keep the atmosphere going without giving it all away, of course. My personal favorite is obviously building up to a climax of something terrible happening in this horror, but you've been creeped out this entire time, the entire story, and then the ending is just like, I'm never going to forget this. I'm never going to forget this. So that I like to do. That's what I like to do. Yeah, it's interesting to write horror in general. And I actually have another video about writing fear in horror. And you can check that out. I'll also link that below, just so you can get a feel of how to get that fear in there, if that's what you're looking for. Again, I don't know what kind you're writing or planning to write, but yeah, there's lots of different types of horror you can write with romance, obviously. And I mean, if you have any questions for me and that you want to ask about whatever type of horror you're trying to write, like how do you, express that in your words, as far as like whether this is going to be a creepy ambiance in there or it's going to be outright gore, like what should you go for? I mean, sometimes I like a mixture of the two. Like my one show horror, The Room Within, has a creepy aspect into a little bit of gore in there at the end. But yeah, it's all about what you want to put out there. Like figuring those things out will help you get ready to develop those things. But yeah, the writing, if you're writing creepy aspects, I love talking about that. I'm gonna have to make a video on writing, creepier aspects, and the fear is relatable to that. So definitely check that out. But yeah, I can definitely talk about horror everything all day because obviously my missus is a horror, so duh. So let me know in the comments below if you're writing a horror romance, if you've written horror before. Do you like horror romance? What's your favorite movie and or book? And I will definitely check those comments out. All right, I'll see you in the next video. Stay scared.